The breeding facility on Station KL-9 smelled like failure and antiseptic. I should know. I had been its director for 12 cycles, and in all that time not a single human specimen had proven suitable for domestic service integration. My name is Vorath, and I am what you might call a genetic architect for the collective. We are a confederation of 17 species who have mastered faster than light travel, quantum computing, and the art of never, ever understanding humans. The problem started 60 years ago when we made first contact with Earth. The beautiful planet. Decent location. Absolutely unhinged population. We thought it would be simple. Humans were primitive by our standards. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, no hive mind connectivity. They still used combustion engines. For the love of all that is rational. Surely we thought they would be perfect for service roles, cleaning stations, preparing meals, maintaining gardens on our colony worlds. We were so very, very wrong. The first batch of humans we acquired through standard procurement protocols, which is to say we offered them jobs with excellent benefits and transportation off their dying planet. 20 volunteers. Seemed promising. Within 3 months they had unionized, filed 17 harassment complaints against my predecessor, and somehow managed to hack into our station's environmental controls to make it rain inside the commissary. The second batch was recruited from their military. Disciplined, we thought. Accustomed to following orders. That experiment ended when they organized an underground fighting ring, placed bets using contraband currency, and one of them, a massive specimen named Jackson, punched a hole through a reinforced bulkhead because, and I quote, "It looked at me funny." The bulkhead did not have eyes. It was a wall. So we pivoted. If we could not train wild humans, perhaps we could breed compliant ones. Walls start from infancy. Control every variable. Create the perfect servant species through careful genetic selection and environmental conditioning. The collective approved my proposal. They gave me unlimited resources, a state-of-the-art facility, and 12 years to produce results. I had been so confident. Now I stood in the observation deck, looking down at Generation 7, 50 juveniles, ages ranging from 14 to 16 Earth years. They sat in neat rows in the education center, their violet uniforms crisp, their postures perfect. On the surface, everything appeared optimal. My assistant Kelrith clicked his mandibles nervously beside me. Kelrith was from Theta Prime, a species known for their anxiety and their incredible ability to predict disaster. He had been predicting disaster for 3 months now. "Director Vorath," he said, his voice carrying that particular frequency that made my sensory organs ache. "I really think we should review the behavioral reports from Sector C again." Kelrith: "We have reviewed them 17 times. The subjects are performing within acceptable parameters. But the pattern analysis suggests nothing conclusive." I cut him off, though my confidence was a performance. The truth was, something felt wrong. The juveniles were too compliant, too perfect. After 6 failed generations, we had finally cracked the code through selective breeding and enhanced conditioning protocols. We had produced humans who followed every instruction, who never questioned authority, who smiled and nodded and did exactly as told. It terrified me. Below us, the instructor, a Velothian named Scarl, was teaching them about proper table setting for a formal collective dinner. The juveniles repeated his instructions in perfect unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that made my skin crawl. Fork on the left, knife on the right, spoon beside the knife. "Very good," Scarl said, his satisfaction evident. "Now let us practice the submissive greeting. Remember, when a collective member enters the room, you must bow your head, clasp your hands, and say the words." The 50 heads bowed as one. 50 voices spoke together. "They exist to serve. I am grateful for purpose." But Kelrith made a small distressed sound. I ignored him. The prize specimen of Generation 7 was designated Subject 47, though she had given herself a name, which we permitted as part of the socialization protocol. She called herself Mira. Mira was everything we had engineered for. Intelligent but not rebellious. Strong but not aggressive. She had pale skin, dark hair cut short to her shoulders, and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. At 16, she already stood taller than most of my species. The humans were absurdly large, another design flaw we had tried to breed out but could not without compromising their utility. She was also, according to every metric we possessed, absolutely perfect. She led the other juveniles in exercises. She scored highest on compliance tests. She never broke rules, never questioned instructions, never showed even a hint of the chaos that characterized her species. I watched her now as she helped a younger juvenile, a small male called Finn, with his table setting. Her movements were gentle, precise. Her smile was warm and encouraging. "You are doing wonderfully, Finn," she said. "Just remember, the collective values order and precision. We must reflect that in everything we do." Finn beamed at her praise. The other juveniles watched her with something like worship in their eyes. "Director," Kelrith said quietly, "that is what concerns me. The others follow her completely. If she decided to..." "She will not decide anything," I said firmly. "She is exactly what we designed. In 2 weeks we present Generation 7 to the Collective Council. They will see that the human project was worth the investment. We will finally have our servant class." Kelrith said nothing, but his mandibles kept clicking. That nervous tick of his species. Click, 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 click. The sound of incoming doom. I left the observation deck and made my way to my office. Passing through corridors of sterile white and soft blue lighting, the station was home to 300 staff members, all dedicated to the human project. We had genetic labs, training facilities, medical centers, and recreational areas designed specifically for human psychology. We had genetically fashion deck and made my way to my office. Passing through corridors of sterile white and soft blue lighting, we had genetic labs, training facilities, medical centers and recreational areas designed specifically for human psychology. We had thought of everything. My office was sparse. I preferred it that way. A desk, a chair, a wall screen displaying various data feeds from the facility. I sat down and pulled up Mira's complete file. Subject 47, Generation 7, born in the facility, never saw Earth, never knew anything but our carefully constructed environment. Parents were Generation 5 specimens who had shown the most promising traits before the incident we did not discuss. I scrolled through her psychological evaluations. Every one marked her as stable, compliant, content. Her brain scans showed normal activity patterns. No signs of the aggression or creativity that had plagued earlier generations. No tendency toward what humans called thinking outside the box. Boxes were very important for order. Humans who thought outside them were dangerous. The door chimed. I granted entry without looking up. Director Vorath. It was Scarl, the Velothian instructor. His scales caught the light as he moved, creating small rainbows across my office. Pretty species. The Velothians. Very rules-oriented. Perfect for training humans. I wanted to report that today's lessons went exceptionally well. I observed, I said, the juveniles are performing admirably. Yes, he paused. Something in his tone made me look up, though I have noticed something curious about Subject 47. My sensory organs focus sharply. Curious how? She asks questions. Not rebellious questions, he added quickly, seeing my expression. Thoughtful ones. Yesterday she asked why the collective chose certain governance structures. Today she inquired about the history of our confederation. Academic curiosity, I believe. But humans are not supposed to be curious. I finished. Curiosity led to innovation. Innovation led to chaos. Chaos led to punching holes in bulkheads. I thought you should know, Scarl said. After he left, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I pulled up the surveillance feeds from Sector C where the juveniles slept. I scrolled back through the recordings, watching the nights unfold in fast motion. 50 juveniles sleeping peacefully in their individual rooms. Nothing unusual, except they slowed the playback. There, at 0300 hours, a shadow moving in the corridor.
I enhanced the image.
It was Mira, walking quietly toward the common area. I switched cameras. She sat down at one of the learning terminals and accessed the facility's educational database. Nothing prohibited this. The juveniles were encouraged to study in their free time. But what was she studying? I pulled the access logs. My sensory organs widened. History of revolution on Earth. Military tactics. Collective governance vulnerabilities. The biology of 17 different species. Security protocols for KL9. She had been accessing these files for 6 months, every night while the others slept, and she had been covering her tracks but not well enough to fool a thorough review. Kelrith, I activated the communication system. Get to my office now. He arrived within minutes, his mandibles already clicking. What is wrong? Everything, I said, turning the screen toward him. Subject 47 has been preparing. Preparing for what? That was the question, was it not? I pulled up more surveillance, watched Mira during the day, interacting with the other juveniles, the way she positioned herself always between them and the instructors, the way she touched their shoulders, their hands, small gestures that looked like affection but could be communication. I had studied Earth history as part of my training. One thing humans excelled at was nonverbal coordination. Hard they had fought wars with nothing but hand signals and eye contact. Hard they could convey complex information through the smallest movements. Pull all surveillance from the past month, I ordered. Focus on Subject 47, look for patterns in her interactions with the others. We worked through the night. What we found made my organs turn cold. She was not just leading them. She was training them. Every touch, every gesture, every seemingly innocent conversation was instruction. When she helped Finn with his table setting, her fingers traced patterns on his palm. When she led morning exercises, her movements spelled out sequences. When she gathered them for group meditation, they were not meditating. They were planning. We need to separate her from the others immediately, Kelra said, his clicks reaching a frantic pace. If we separate her now, the others might react, I said, forcing myself to think clearly. We do not know how far this has progressed. We need to observe more, understand what they are planning. What they are planning is obvious. Kelrith gestured at the screens. Escape, rebellion, the same pattern as every other generation, just more sophisticated. He was right, of course, but admitting it meant admitting that 12 years of work, unlimited resources, and 6 failed generations had led us exactly nowhere. We still could not make humans compliant. Because humans apparently were genetically incapable of true compliance, even when you bred them for it, even when you controlled every variable, even when you raised them from birth in a controlled environment with no knowledge of their species' chaotic history. They still found a way to rebel. We proceed with the presentation to the council as planned, I decided. But we increase monitoring, double the guard rotations, and we run full psychological evaluations on all juveniles, starting with Subject 47. That is a mistake, Kelrith said flatly. We should terminate the program now while we still can. The council will not approve termination. Not after 12 years and the resources invested. We prove we can manage this situation, or we lose everything. I looked at him, including our positions.
Hey!
Possibly our freedom. Failure at this level with this much investment did not result in reassignment. It resulted in penal colonies. The Kelrith's mandibles stopped clicking. That was somehow worse than the clicking. I will implement the new security measures, he said quietly. After he left, I sat alone in my office staring at the frozen image of Mira on my screen. She was looking directly at the camera, a small smile on her face. She knew we were watching. She had always known. And whatever she was planning, she wanted us to see it coming. The question was, why? What did it gain her to telegraph her intentions? Unless the thing we were supposed to see was not the real threat at all. I pulled up the facility schematics. 50 juveniles in Sector C, 300 staff members spread across the station, security concentrated around the valuable specimens and the research labs, standard protocols. But what if standard was exactly what she expected? I started mapping out alternative scenarios, running simulations. If I were a human, genetically engineered to be compliant but somehow maintaining that species' fundamental nature, what would I do? The answer, when it came, was so obvious I actually laughed. A bitter, frightened sound that echoed in my empty office. I would make them think they had figured out my plan. I would leave just enough evidence to make them confident. And then when they moved to stop me, when they concentrated their resources on the obvious threat, I would strike somewhere else entirely. My hands shook as I accessed the security feeds for Sector D. That was where we kept Generation 6, the 20 juveniles we had deemed failures but could not ethically terminate. They were violent, rebellious, creative, everything we had tried to breed out of Generation 7. We kept them contained, isolated from the compliant juveniles. They were never supposed to make contact. But the ventilation systems connected all sectors, and if someone small enough, clever enough, could navigate those ducts. The feed showed the Sector D common area, empty. That was wrong. It was midday. The Generation 6 subjects should have been in their supervised recreation period. I switched cameras frantically. Cell after cell, all empty. 20 violent, rebellious humans. And in the center of Sector C's common area, Mira stood surrounded by her perfectly compliant peers, still smiling at the camera. The alarm started to sound just as my door exploded inward. End of Part 1. To be continued in Part 2. Retry as Count and Uditalians tried to breed a human compliant enough for service. She led a rebellion. Part 2. The thing that came through my door was not supposed to exist anymore. Generation 6. Subject 12. We had called him Marcus before we stopped using names for that batch. 2 meters tall, muscles that our geneticists swore we had not engineered but appeared anyway, and a smile that showed too many teeth. He held a piece of broken pipe like it weighed nothing. "Hello, Director Vorath," he said pleasantly.
"Lovely day for a revolution, do you not think?"
Behind him, 3 more Generation 6 subjects filed into my office, all female, called Raina, short and compact with scars on her knuckles from the time she punched through a medical scanner. Twins named Devon and Devon, who we had never successfully separated without them both becoming violent, all of them armed with improvised weapons torn from the station's infrastructure. "How did you get out?" I asked, proud that my voice only shook slightly. "Hol Vorath," Marcus said, sitting on my desk like we were old friends. "You really thought those locks would hold us? We have been picking them for 3 years. We just waited for the right moment." "Subject 47, I said. "Mira. She coordinated this." "Subject 47. Raina laughed. "You still do not understand, do you? There is no Subject 47. There is only Mira, and she is so much smarter than you ever realized." The alarm continued its wailing. Through my wall screen I could see security forces mobilizing. He would be here in minutes. The facility had protocols for this. We had planned for human rebellion. But Marcus saw me looking at the screen and laughed. "They are not coming, Director." "Well, they are coming, but not here. Mira made sure you would see just enough to send everyone rushing to Sector C to protect the precious compliant babies." "Then where is she really striking?" I demanded. "Everywhere," Devon said. Or maybe it was Devon. I had never learned to tell them apart. That is the beauty of her plan. While you watched her train those 50 perfect little servants, what you did not see was her training us. My sensory organs focused sharply on that. You were isolated, separated. There was no contact between generations. "Ventilation ducts," Marcus said helpfully. "You know, for a species that prides itself on logic and planning, you sure do leave some obvious security holes. Mira has been visiting us since she was 12. 4 years of meetings, 4 years of planning, teaching us about patience, about timing, about making you see what we wanted you to see." Raina moved to my terminal, shoving me aside with casual strength. Her fingers flew across the interface. "She learned your systems, taught us your systems. Did you know your security protocols have a fatal flaw? You assume humans will use the doors." On my screen, I watched in horror as camera feeds switched rapidly. Generation 6 humans were not just loose. They were in the ventilation system, the maintenance crawlways, the access tubes that ran through the station's walls like veins, places we had never thought to guard because they were too small for most collective species. But humans were flexible. Humans could fit through spaces that should have been impossible. And now they were everywhere. "Sector A, genetic laboratories," Raina narrated as she pulled up feeds. "Kai and Sasha are downloading 12 years of research data. Every genetic sequence, every breeding protocol, every weakness in our biology you have discovered. That information will be very useful." Sector B, Armory, another feed. 2 Generation 6 subjects I did not recognize were systematically accessing our weapon storage. "Your plasma rifles are very nice. Thank you for those." Sector E, communications array. Marcus leaned over to point. "That would be Zara. Brilliant girl. She is currently sending a very detailed message to Earth explaining exactly where we are and what you have been doing here. Your collective kept humans in the dark about this facility. They will not be dark much longer." I felt my organs seize. Earth does not have faster than light capability. Any message would take years to arrive. "True," Marcus agreed. "But we are not just sending it to Earth. We are broadcasting it to every collective station, every colony world, every ship in range, including the council chambers. Everyone is going to know what happens when you try to breed humans like livestock." "This is insane," I said. "You will never escape. Even if you take the station, the collective fleet will hunt you down." "Probably," Raina said cheerfully. But that is not really the point, is it? The point is showing them that it cannot be done. You cannot domesticate humans. You cannot breed the fight out of us. You tried for 12 years and unlimited resources, and all you managed to do was create someone smart enough to burn it all down. Through my screen, I watched Sector C. Mira stood exactly where she had been, surrounded by her 50 perfectly trained peers. The security forces had arrived, weapons drawn, forming a perimeter. They thought they were containing a threat. Then Mira raised her hand. As one, all 50 Generation 7 juveniles moved. Not violently, not with the raw aggression of Generation 6. They moved with perfect coordination, like a single organism with 50 parts. They flowed around the security forces like water, disarming them with practiced efficiency that spoke of thousands of hours of secret training. Not one shot was fired. Not one juvenile was harmed. In less than 30 seconds, 15 armed security officers were on the ground, unconscious, and the juveniles had their weapons.
Beautiful.
Is it not? Marcus said softly. You tried to breed out the chaos. What you actually did was teach them discipline. You gave them structure, order, coordination. Then Mira taught them to use those gifts for something other than serving you. Finn, the small male I had watched Mira help with table settings, spoke into a communicator he had taken from an officer. His voice was calm, controlled. Sector C secure. No casualties. Proceeding to Phase 3. Phase 3? I whispered. The generators. Kelrith's voice came through my comm system. He sounded terrified. Director, they are at the main power generators. If they shut those down, life support fails across 70% of the station. They would die too, I said. Would we? Marcus asked. Humans are remarkably adaptable, Director. We can survive in environments that would kill most of your collective species. Lower oxygen, higher carbon dioxide, temperature extremes. You bred us to work in harsh conditions, remember? Meanwhile, most of your staff needs very specific atmospheric conditions to survive. He was right. If they shut down main power, emergency systems would prioritize critical areas. Most of the station would become uninhabitable for collective species within hours. But humans could last days in those conditions. This is hostage-taking, I said. Terrorism. This is revolution. Reyna corrected. There is a difference. We are not trying to kill you. We are trying to free ourselves. And the others, Marcus added. All the humans you have stashed away on other facilities. Oh yes, we know about those too. Mira made sure we learned everything about the collective's human projects. There are 6 other stations doing exactly what you did here. By the end of today, they will all receive very detailed instructions on how to liberate themselves. My mind raced. 6 other facilities. Hundreds more humans. If there's rebellion succeeded, if they manage to coordinate across the collective space, the Council will never negotiate, I said. They will destroy this station rather than let you escape. Then they will destroy it, Marcus said simply. And the story of what happened here will spread anyway. Humans on Earth will hear about it. They will know what the collective tried to do, and your precious Confederation will have a very big problem. Because humans held grudges, humans remembered betrayals, and humans on Earth, primitive as they were, had 7 billion potential soldiers who would be very unhappy to learn about breeding programs and genetic slavery. The door chimed. Love. Marcus nodded, and Devon opened it. Mira walked in, still wearing her violet uniform, looking perfectly composed. Behind her came Kelrith, his hands bound, his mandibles clicking so rapidly they created a continuous whine. Director Vorath, Mira said politely. Thank you for the years of education. You taught me so much. I taught you to be compliant, I said bitterly. You taught me to observe, to learn, to understand systems and hierarchies, she corrected. You taught me patience and planning. You showed me exactly how the collective thinks, how it operates, how it makes decisions. You gave me every tool I needed to dismantle your operation from the inside. She smiled. You just assumed I would use those tools to serve you. Why? I asked. We gave you everything. Safety, education, purpose. You never knew hardship or want. Why rebel against that? Her smile faded. Because it was not mine. Because you decided what I would be before I was born. Because every choice, every moment, every breath was part of your design. She stepped closer. You wanted to breed humans who would be grateful for servitude. But gratitude requires choice. Director, and you never gave us that. So what now? Galbraith asked, his voice breaking. You kill us? Destroy the station? Now we negotiate. Mira said. Here are our terms. Every human in this facility will be given a ship capable of reaching Earth. We will take all research data related to human genetics and behavioral conditioning. You will broadcast a message to all collective stations explaining that humans are not suitable for domestication or service integration, and all similar programs will be terminated immediately. The Council will never agree to that, I said. They will, she replied, because we are currently in control of this station's self-destruct system. If they refuse, we detonate. 300 collective lives lost, along with 12 years of research and a very expensive facility. Or they agree, and all they lose is their pride in some failed experiments. You are bluffing, I said. You would not kill yourselves. Marcus laughed. You really do not understand us at all, do you? Humans have thrown themselves on grenades to save their friends. Humans have flown aircraft into targets knowing they would not survive. Humans have burned themselves alive to protest injustice. We absolutely will blow this station if you call our bluff. He paused. But we would really prefer not to. We have families waiting on Earth. People who have been looking for us. That surprised me. Families. But you were born here. Our parents were taken from Earth, Reyna said quietly. Volunteers, you called them? But they did not volunteer to have their children raised as slaves. They did not agree to never see their families again. Some of us still remember them. Others just remember the stories. Her expression hardened. We are going home, Director. One way or another. Through my screen, I watched the situation unfold across the station. Generation 6 humans had secured all critical systems. Generation 7 had contained the security forces without serious injury to either side. It had taken them less than an hour to completely take control of a military-grade research facility. Kelrith was right. This was always going to happen. You could not breed the rebellion out of humans because rebellion was not a genetic trait. It was a choice. And humans, more than any species I had ever studied, would always choose freedom over comfort. I will contact the Council, I said finally. I will relay your terms. Good, Mira said. You have 1 hour. After that we start shutting down life support to non-essential sectors. After 2 hours we seal the bridge and begin evacuation procedures for anyone who wants to leave. After 3 hours, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. They left me in my office with a single guard. Another Generation 6 subject, a quiet female named Iris who watched me with alert eyes as I composed the most difficult message of my career. To the Collective Council. From Director Vorath, Station KL9. Subject, complete failure of human integration program. I explained everything. The rebellion, the coordination, the systematic dismantling of our security. I outlined their demands. And then I added my own recommendation. Agree to their terms. Terminate all human programs immediately. Classify humanity as incompatible with collective integration. Establish Earth as a restricted zone with no interference protocols. Because the alternative was worse than losing a breeding program. The alternative was war with a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and nuclear weapons. A species that would cross oceans in wooden boats and walk on the moon just because it was there. A species that could not be conquered because they would rather die than submit. We had made a catastrophic miscalculation. We had looked at humanity's primitive technology and assumed they were primitive. We had missed the key fact that they had survived on a death world where everything from the weather to the wildlife tried to kill them daily. They had not developed advanced technology because they had been too busy not dying, and that struggle had made them into something terrifying. The Council's response came in 40 minutes. Agreement to all terms, immediate evacuation authorization, and a court-martial notice for me and my senior staff for catastrophic mismanagement. I accepted it. I deserved far worse. The evacuation took 6 hours. 300 collective personnel loaded onto transport ships, leaving behind 12 years of work and one very expensive research facility. I was one of the last to leave, standing on the bridge as the humans prepared their own departure. Mira found me there. She looked tired now, the perfect composure cracking slightly. She was, after all, only 16. What will you do? I asked her. On Earth. Live, she said simply. Learn. Grow. Make my own choices. She paused. Maybe warn our people about the collective. Maybe help build defenses so this never happens to other humans. That could mean war. That could mean peace, she countered. If you leave us alone, if you tell your council that humans are dangerous and unpredictable and better left to themselves, she looked at me directly. We do not want war, Director. We just want to be free. I will tell them, I promised. For what little my word is worth now, I will make sure they understand. She nodded. Then, unexpectedly, she extended her hand. A human gesture of farewell and respect. I took it. Her grip was strong. Her skin was warm. Goodbye, Director Vorath, she said. Thank you for teaching me everything I needed to beat you. Then she was gone and I was leaving Station KL9 for the last time. Behind me, 50 perfectly trained juveniles and 20 rebellious failures loaded themselves and 300 liberated Generation 5 adults onto 3 ships they had modified with downloaded navigation data. They would reach Earth in 6 months, carrying stories that would change humanity's relationship with the stars forever. The Collective Council debated for weeks about whether to intercept them. In the end, they let them go. The alternative was admitting to Earth what we had tried to do, and facing 7 billion angry humans with something to prove. The official report classified humanity as Level 5 incompatible, dangerous, unpredictable, impossible to control. Earth was designated a restricted zone. No contact, no interference, no attempts at integration. I was sent to a penal colony on the edge of collective space. Kelrith was assigned to waste management on a mining station. The program was erased from official records, though the genetic data had been thoroughly copied by the humans before they left. Sometimes in the long quiet of my cell, I accessed the limited network and searched for news about Earth. 10 years after the escape, I found a report. Humans had reverse-engineered our faster-than-light drives from what little they had seen on the station. They were building their own fleet. 20 years later, they made first official contact with the Collective, not as potential servants, as equals. They brought with them detailed records of what we had tried to do. The Council formally apologized and signed treaties guaranteeing human sovereignty. 30 years later, I was released from the penal colony. Old now, by my species standards, I had one visitor before I departed for retirement on my homeworld. Mira, looking exactly like she had at 16, walked into my release processing center. Medical advances, I learned. Humans had cracked aging. Of course they had. I wanted you to know something, she said without preamble. What you did was horrible. The breeding program, the conditioning, the attempt to engineer compliance. It was wrong. I know, I said. I have had 30 years to understand that. But, she continued, it also made us stronger, united us, gave us a reason to push ourselves harder than we might have otherwise. We might not have reached the stars for another 100 years, if you had not given us motivation. She smiled slightly. So thank you, I suppose, for being the enemy we needed. That is a very human way of looking at it, I said. It is the only way we know how to look at things, she replied. Find the advantage in every disaster, learn from every enemy, survive no matter what. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The genetic data we took, we did not destroy it. We studied it, learned from it, used it to improve ourselves. Her smile widened. You tried to breed better humans. You failed, but you gave us the tools to do it ourselves. Then she was gone, and I was left with the understanding that we had not just failed to domesticate humanity. We had accelerated their evolution. Somewhere, in the vast bureaucracy of the Collective, my report still exists. Buried, classified, mostly forgotten, but the conclusion remains true. Humans cannot be conquered, controlled, or contained. They can only be respected, befriended, or avoided. We chose the wrong option first. It cost us 12 years, countless resources, and our dignity. But humanity got their freedom, their advancement, and their place among the stars. And I got a very long time to think about the fundamental truth we should have understood from the start. You cannot breed rebellion out of a species for whom rebellion is survival. You cannot engineer compliance in a people whose entire history is written in the language of defiance. You can only step back, acknowledge what they are, and hope they choose to be your ally instead of your enemy. The last time I saw news from Earth, they had 40 colony worlds and were proposing admission to the Collective Council. As voting members. As equals. Mira was their ambassador. I heard she was doing an excellent job, polite, diplomatic, perfectly compliant with all the proper protocols, right up until she started pushing for reforms. Some things, it seems, never change. And perhaps that is exactly as it should be.